Hilda, welcome to the Potential is Human podcast. Life certainly had to weave together a series of events, but also, of course, people for us to be able to have this discussion. So I'm really happy to be here with you and just want to say thank you for making the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Hilda, question to start this all off. In your opinion and understanding, what on earth are we as human beings here for?
I think that we are here to learn to live more compassionately. And I think that takes many, 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 many lifetimes. I don't think we can, in a blink, learn this. We know on a daily basis how many minutes of that day we are completely without compassion. And hopefully, more often than not, we can learn to become a little bit more compassionate next time. And I also think the trick is not to beat yourself up when you forget who you are.
Brilliant answer. I think it seems like a simple answer, but it's, as you say, lifetimes. And if we only want to say this lifetime, if we want to stop there, it's a lifetime of work.
Absolutely. And I think, I look in the mirror and I'm now an old people, but the old people were right by saying we only learn wisdom when we're older. And that's most certainly been true in my life as well.
Snap. This guy, when he was younger, really wasn't wise, and I'm still learning. Hilda, if it is about a journey of learning to become more compassionate, if we just look at your life experiences, only some of which I know about, your father was an alcoholic, you told me. Your mom passed away when you were just 12 years old, and you literally left home when you were 15. Now, I can't begin to imagine what that must be like. How did you navigate life at 15 years old, being out of the home?
I think there's two ways to look at it. When children are having a rough time, they're not aware that they're having a rough time. They just muddle along and get on with it, So for me, it was really not about a rough time. The periods that were really, really rough was after my mother passed away. There seemed to be no anchor in my life. There seemed to be just a void, and my father was drinking heavily, and then he remarried a stepmother, and she was just a woman from hell. And I learned very quickly that the only person that's going to have my back is me. And that made me a little bit tougher than I should have been, probably. It made me a little bit more judgmental. It made me a little bit harsher in life, in the beginning of the life. I had a don't mess with me attitude from very, very young. But, I muddled along. I was 15. By then I knew how to forge my father's signature. And whatever I did, I just signed his name and they just let me get on with it. So really, looking back, it wasn't that hard. I was just very young, but I was very tough because of the experiences that I learned. It was easier for me to be away from stepmother than to be with stepmother. It's that simple.
I mean, that probably speaks into how challenging that relationship with stepmother must have been, because we can automatically go into that story of how difficult that all was for you and how terrible, but you yourself have just said it wasn't that hard.
Well, living with stepmother retrospectively was really tough, and I knew it was worse than other kids were having. So I knew that was really tough. But the choice to run away, and there are others that run away as well, but they run away and it's a play run away. I just went, no more, I'm done. And I never went home again. And that's I think the main difference. So for me also, it's nobody who comes to wisdom quickly comes to wisdom without challenges. I think those of us that come to wisdom relatively early will have had a challenging time as a child. I don't think there's a way of coming to wisdom without challenges, but the scope of the challenge is really how quickly we get there.
certainly when I look at my own experiences and the more significant moments, which are often challenges, I've started accepting on a deeper level that this is a challenging journey, and it's actually those challenges which are the doorway to wisdom or learning about who we really are. But then what I
Yes.
also started to see, and I'd love to hear what you think, it's that, my challenges are my personal challenges, but the magnitude of what that challenge is versus someone else's, or someone else's versus mine, the degrees don't really matter. When we're going through it, it is our challenge, and it might be the biggest challenge we've faced, and others might be going through more difficult things, but there's no measurability around it. It's all there to refine our process.
Yeah, I think so. I think that look, some challenges are really, really mind-bending that need years of therapy to overcome. I'm not making light of that at all. There are some people that are challenged beyond what one should experience. And if I compare what I went through versus what some other people went through, I just go, there for the grace of God, go I. So it really, and I think the impact the challenge has is directly related to the level of hardship of the challenge. So, I know for a fact that victims become perpetrators. So I had to make a conscious decision that this behavior stops with me, so that I can break that generational, the generation unto the seventh generation, one of our wise books say, and let that generational trauma end with me. But in creating that barrier, I didn't repeat that trauma, but I created new trauma to what, and I don't think there's a child that doesn't have parental trauma. I think we all do. And I think it's ignorance. And I think I was young when my son was born. I was only just 20 years old. So, and how much life experience do you have at 20? So I already entered my relationship with my son heavily scarred from childhood trauma myself. And I only healed that childhood trauma in my mid-30s. So for the first 15 years of his life, I raised him through the veil of my trauma. So there's no surprise that it's unto the seventh generation. So I might have stopped the trauma of alcoholic father and vicious stepmother, because I turned into a stepmother as well. But I know my stepchildren came to me afterwards and said, you were a lighthouse in our world. So those are the choices I made not to repeat that trauma. But when we experience anything at all, whether it's a story a friend is telling, or we're reading a book, we read that book or have that experience through the veil of our experience or our pain or our joy. So things that make us joyful from the time we're small, if somebody shares their joy and it's in alignment with our joy, then we're doubly joyful. But if we experience trauma again, so for instance, if I was made to feel small, my arrogance of personality would come out and blast right through it to protect my inner child from the shaming that happened in my youth. So, and that's not necessarily a great thing. It was very harsh. So everybody called me the one-liner queen. So I would be the woman that cut the guys off at the knees if they made any derogatory statement. I don't know how rude we can get on this program, but it was just lash out and it was defensive and terrible. So, and the lashing out would be out of proportion to the threat. And that's a trauma response. It's not a intellectual response or emotional response. It's a trauma response. And we all have trauma responses. That's why there's trauma bonding that we need to live with. Our hearts will bond with someone else that's also traumatized. And we create these dysfunctional relationships amid the trauma. So it's learning to look at yourself. And I learned from Colleen Joy Page the equal to experience rather than the forgiveness experience. So the equal to the forgiveness experience, it says, I'm the one in the high ground. I forgive you for doing this to me. But the equal to experience is, I am clearly equal to what my stepmother handed out, because here I am, stronger than ever. So for me, I'm here despite her. If I held the trauma like a trophy and displayed it to everybody, she's still ruling my life. Or if I still hold on to the trauma from alcoholic father, then the trauma of having an alcoholic father is still governing my life. So one has to choose, instead of being angry and lashing out, can I be equal to? And can I let it go? Not deny that this happened to me, but being who I am now with, despite this happening to me. So I think that's what made me win out in the end, you know?
Yeah, I've never heard it put like that. And I think it's incredibly important what you've just said, because we can identify with our experiences and then use them, as you say, to be above others or be more wise, so we think, or, have a better perspective than others. But the equal
Yeah.
to is that circling back to the compassion and understanding that they're also going through their traumas.
People hurt people. We know that. Intellectually, we know that. And it's if you haven't dealt with your trauma, if you haven't become equal to your trauma, that you can look the traumatic experience. I always say, if you can tell the story without crying, you've healed the trauma. So that for me is a good measure, so, and every experience, every traumatic experience adds another, a little hole to our hearts. I don't think those holes heal. I think we live around those spaces that are created. Instead of buying a new car to fill the hole, or overeating to fill the hole, or over fighting, having bar fights, or buying 200 pairs of new shoes, because we try to fill those holes with another experience, instead of honoring the hole to say, yes, this has happened to me, but I am not a victim to it anymore. It has happened. And now I can make wiser decisions, and I don't have to pay it forward. I can just say, how else will I pay my life forward to make it better? Really.
Let's not skim over what you said there, because it's normal, and I say normal in inverted commas, for people in society to try and fill that hole, like you say, with buying things, with acquiring things, with outcomes. But being able to sit with
lovers, road racing, work, we fill the hole with something. Some of us get addicted to those things that we use to fill the holes with. And some things are not addictive. I overdose on coffee regularly every day. So it's also a method of filling the hole. Anything that's too much is an opportunity to try and fill those holes. But some of us choose less destructive measures. It's critical. It's critically important to understand the hole is there. It's not going to be plugged. It's a hole called wicked stepmother. That hole is always going to be there. Or it's a hole called drunken father. It's always going to be there. Or if it's a hole called the love of my life passed away and dropped dead, it's never going to go away. Even if I do love again, it's never going to go away. So it's to acknowledge it. It's there, but I won't hold it up as my advertising banner to say, this is who I am. It is not. This is what I experienced. And despite that, I will rise to bigger things and greater things despite that. That, I think, is the point.
What you're saying now reminds me of this very fine line between, bypassing and becoming in some sense holier than others for our experiences, and not actually acknowledging that they happened, they were real in this experience, and there's no need to push that away or pretend like I'm not impacted by the experience, the feelings, the trauma.
I think one remains impacted by the trauma for forever. There's never going to be a Hilda wasn't traumatized by her stepmother experience. There's never going to be that. So to this day, if anybody holds me down or puts their hand over my mouth, I will irrationally and furiously lash out, and it will stay there for the rest of my life. But if somebody just says, you shouldn't be so arrogant. I just go, yeah, whatever. So it's how I relate to that. But and you know, I was later married to a very violent man. So if anybody in the street should attempt any violence, you know, we've heard stories of women picking up cars because their kids are stuck under them. So that's a trauma response for me. The moment I feel threatened, I overreact to the situation hugely. So one has to be careful how you react, you know, so that it's in a stranger. If I'm feeling threatened, if my life is threatened, somebody's going to die, it's not going to be me. And that's a trauma response. But if somebody is just mean to me, instead of cutting them down to size anymore, I just go, whatever. Somebody recently said to me, you're white, so you come from a privileged background. And I went, yeah, I do. Because just by the fact that my skin is white makes me privileged. I can get a bank loan easier. I can get a home loan easier. But nobody, and I don't need to relate my trauma and defend myself. So I can let that go.
Do you feel that over the years, you know, that almost instantaneous reactivity is something that you've become more aware of and been able to respond to, rather than it, let's say, take over?
Not all the time. Not all the time. So if for every 50 times that my trauma is triggered, let's say 45 times I manage it properly. But it also depends on the number of times I'm triggered, and the little cat last straw on the camel's back goes crash, and then I still react badly. But the volume of times that I react badly are fewer and fewer and fewer. And I can just, you know, I've written a book about this. So, and everybody goes, oh my God, I can't believe you went through this. And I went, yes, I did. But it teaches you who you are, and it teaches you resilience. And I'm not a glorifying resilience at all. I hope to have the rest of my life without having to be resilient. But it does teach you resilience. I don't want to be an overachiever because of my trauma either, which is what I have done basically my whole life. But acknowledging that I can do a very wide spectrum of things is not a trauma response. That is what is so. So what is so is different from whining about what was. You know, so yeah, I do react badly occasionally. Traffic. And
Traffic's not one that's got me, but I can understand, and I appreciate so much that you can own that. You know, I think it's very easy to pretend like when you do this work or you live your journey and become more wise, that nothing impacts you, and you seem to be the saint that moves through life, but like it impacts you.
It impacts you. It definitely impacts you. And I know when I'm overreacting, or if the reaction is out of balance with what's going on. Traffic is traffic. It's never going to go away. So instead of just saying, oh, okay, traffic, I go, no, you don't know how to drive, and put your indicator. It's madness, you know. And the older I get, the more people look at me strangely, because nobody expects somebody with gray hair to hoot and flash and whatever, you know. So it's fun.
I don't see grays, Hilda. I see silver and pink. Question around the author aspect, right? So you are an author, you're a healer, and we can also say spiritual teacher. But I want to add to that you're also the general manager at is it a truck accessory company?
Yes, I am.
Why truck accessory company and not just, you know, author and spiritual teacher?
You know, in South Africa, you're considered a very successful author if you sold 2,000 books. Nobody can live on 9% of 2,000 books. So essentially, I love writing, and publishing books is really a meaningful thing to do. And it puts me in a category. I don't have an education. If we just look at my education, I should barely be able to read and write. But my ability to take a concept that could be quite difficult and convoluted, my gift is to put it in a perspective that's easily understandable. So my gift is really the writing. it's a gift. I can't live on it. It really, I've handed out more books than I've sold. So it's really just if I'm teaching somebody, or if I'm speaking at an event, I just hand the books out, because when I was seeking, I would have loved somebody just to give me a book. And the way I teach is not everyone's cup of tea. You know, I tend to be a get over yourself kind of teacher. And I don't teach airy fairy, hey shua, meditate and become holy. I don't teach that at all. In my view, spirituality for me, I thought in the beginning, when I was on the beginning of my journey, that I had to turn into Mrs. Sweet and Nice. I've never been sweet and nice. But instead of me wanting to leave the physical realm and seek the spiritual realm, I'm saying, bring the wisdom of my soul into my life so that I can be more at peace here. My soul's already perfect. It already knows everything. It already connects with God. It is already my God self. What I need to do is live on the earth, not take up an AK-47 to the streets and shoot 500 people. So it's about remaining more compassionate, doing more of what is right. And what is right is not always what society says we must do. What is right is sometimes tough. And I have tough lessons. Some time ago, I had a woman come to me saying, I want a divorce. And I went, and she said, I don't feel safe. I said, how many times, or my husband doesn't make me feel safe. I said, how many times have you criticized his manhood, or tell him that you regret ever meeting him? That's making him feel not safe. So it's not something she wanted to hear. And she quietened down and she said, oh my God, I'm reaping what I'm sowing. And that's where it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear when you're contributing to the demise of your relationship and owning that. It's hard to hear. And that's what I teach. And people come to me when they've tried, you know, I do a life coaching session, but I go 6 sessions and I charge a lot of money. And you pay me first. And after the first session, I'll give you your money back if I don't think you're going to be willing to do the work. Because if you're not willing to do the work, then my reputation is at stake. But if you're willing to do the work, you've got 6 sessions and your life will change. But it's not going to be 6 easy sessions. It's going to be a hard look at who I am and what am I doing to create discontent in my life. That's hard to hear and hard to look at. So it's not about reach for your soul and let more wisdom. It's not about that. Is what are you habitually doing that creates the same patterns in your life? So for instance, if somebody says my relationships never work, and I go, what are you habitually doing to make them end the same way? Because you can't bring the same effort to a relationship and expect a different result. If you want something different, put something different into it. I mean, that is a 100-year-old teaching, if not 1,000-year-old teaching. If you bring the same stuff, you're going to get the same stuff. So let's look at the stuff that you're bringing that's toxic. Hard to look at your own toxic stuff. And we're all toxic under certain circumstances.
For sure.
And if we don't learn to deal with that toxicity, we're going to remain toxic. To change that is hard, you know?
For me, that comes down to like, who am I being in every situation, and how am I contributing, you know, as I navigate to this journey called life? Because we so easily want to project our stuff onto others. But as you say, like, take responsibility. You can only take responsibility for yourself. And then, yes, some relationships may honestly not serve you, but like you just said, more often than not, you know, we're contributing to that turmoil and just making it the blame onto others.
Yeah, so yeah, that's very true. Let me just recap. So the author and the spiritual teacher and the healer and the general manager. So the general manager pays for this.
Yes.
It pays for this, and it pays for the makeup, and it pays for my glasses. And the spiritual stuff is a gift. It's a gift. I do charge, but it's not exorbitant, because my livelihood doesn't depend on it. So there's no vested interest that I have to have 10 clients and they have to follow my way. There's no vested interest there. So in my experience, the people who are looking for a spiritual teacher will find their way to me when everything else is falling apart. But, a friend of mine introduced me one day to say, Hilda does open heart surgery spiritually without anesthetic.
That's pretty intense.
It's pretty intense. So it's intense stuff. And one of the first questions I ask is, who are you? And they often answer with what they do. So I am not a general manager. I'm also not a spiritual teacher. Who am I? I'm a person that's learning to be gentler, but I'm also a catalyst for change. Whether that's in the work environment or the author environment or the magazine environment or the whatever environment, I will change how they've used to do it or how everybody does it into how I think works better. And if somebody's got a better way than my way, then I'll follow that. But my I am statement is I am a catalyst for change. It's not what I do. It's not being an author. It's not being a spiritual healer. It's not being a general manager. I go into that company and I change how they do business. It's what I do.
No, that's excellently said. Do you feel like that understanding that you have has required you to explore the deeper essence of what you are in just the I am sense, and then take that back into the world, knowing that I'm not actually any of my titles or roles, and those are what I do. I'm something, whether we want to use the word greater, deeper, and your journey's obviously revealed that to you. Am I correct?
Yeah, they're coming to the catalyst for change is I was in a class many years ago, and the teacher asked, what is your I am statement? And everybody said, I am this, and I went, I have to think about this. And then immediately my child self came in and said, you can't say that. That just sounds too big or too arrogant or too full of yourself or too whatever. But that's what I do. I change people's lives, whether that's in a spiritual environment or a work environment, or if they read my book, or I'm a catalyst for change. I don't change their lives. I give them the tools to change their own lives. So I'm a catalyst for change.
Brilliant. And I love that you do take it into the workplace, because my question originally stemmed from, why not just the healer and spiritual teacher? But I'm seeing in my own process as well that the world needs us out there, and we need to be that compassionate demonstration in society. Otherwise, what good is it me just sitting here having these conversations?
Absolutely. Don't forget that if I'm a tough spiritual teacher, I'm also a tough general manager. Because if my primary objective is turn this company around to make money, what do I need to change to get that done? So if they've been doing it something like this for 25 years and it's not working, how are we going to get this company to be profitable if we don't change it? So I do that, and I'm tough in the spiritual environment. I'm tough as an author. I'm also tough as a general manager. But I really recognize when somebody sees the benefit of the change and they run with it. That's the beauty of it, So if the change, not only do you design the change, but you show an implementation. You show the implementation of that change and what impact it has later on. So that's important. If you have no impact and what you're doing is not changing anything, then you're wasting your time.
Yeah. I've seen many examples of people who don't necessarily want to go out and make the change, and maybe that's not their path, or they somehow like renounce the world and life and rather go on the inward journey, inward to forever, right? But in my experience and opinion, like, we're here to be humans and interact and create change and grow and learn along the way. So avoiding the chaos will create more chaos for you at some point.
Chaos is chaos. It's never going to go away. Pain is pain. It's never going to go away. It's part of being human, If there's the extent of the chaos and the extent of the change depends on the circumstance. So whether you're bumping your toe against the couch or you've just driven your car off a cliff, pain is pain is pain. It's the extent of it that has an impact. So how do we learn to manage the painful situations better? What do we need to do to change our lives to better cope with it? You know?
Hilda, there's a definite no bullshit approach to the way you do things, but there's also a softness, but it's not a sweetness, right? It's not this overly sweet and kumbaya approach. It's direct. No. Has it always been that way? But has it softened more? Because you said like you were once, it was very direct. Do you feel like there's been a softening?
No, there's been a less judgment.
Less judgment.
It's less judgment. So I understand that one of my gifts is to take a difficult concept and make it easy, and I can go, boop, 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 this is how it should work. And I understand that not many people can do that as quickly as I can. And that's not an arrogant statement. That is just what is so. So what I've had to learn to do is become more patient in the teaching of how. And whether that teaching of how is in the spiritual realm or in the business realm or in the writing a book realm, lots of people say to me, how do you write a book? And I go, sit on your ass in front of your computer and start typing. But I can't, then you can't write a book.
Yeah.
So that directness it will never go away. This is definitely not. But I'm a lot more patient when I'm teaching do you understand the why? If I give somebody a task to do, whether it's a spiritual task, writing in a journal, I go that the outcome that I want will produce this. This is the methodology to get there. So from a personality archetypal perspective, there are also a couple of things at stake. There are people that are intellectually centered. So the objective is to understand. And then there are people that are emotionally centered. That is to feel. Then there are people that are action centered. That is to do. And you can't get an action person to feel or think first. They need to do first. You can't get an emotionally centered person to think or do first. They need to feel first. You can't get an intellectually centered person to feel it and do it. Let them first work it out. So there's not one that's better than the other. So if you're dealing with an emotionally centered person, immediately your communication style has to change, that you're understanding that they are feeling centered. And if they're feeling centered, how do you bring your understanding of the concept over to them in a feeling kind of way? So when I'm coaching a person that's action centered, you go do this to achieve that. So it's not understand this to achieve that, it's do this to achieve that. So and those three centers are primary. And when we're in relationship, the love of my life was an action-centered individual, and I'm an intellectually centered individual. So he would come home steaming because somebody made him furious at work. And I'd go, sweetie, why don't you go chop some wood so we can have a braai? So if you're dealing with an action-centered person and he'd stomp off and take the axe and chop the wood because now I've asked him to do something more. And then 15 minutes later, he comes in and lights the fire and he's whistling away, So it's kind of important. If you're in a relationship with a woman, for instance, because women are more often emotionally centered, if you're in a relationship with somebody that's emotionally centered and she's storming off and you sit down very calmly and it goes, are you upset? Tell me why you're upset. And you shut up and you listen, because once the words are out, then it's going to be easier. And if you're if you're in a relationship with an intellectually centered person, it's make them understand. I don't understand why there's this much high drama. Make me understand. So that doing, feeling, and understanding is a very, very core issue for me in my interactions with others. It took me a long time to learn that, though, like really.
When you talk about the spiritual aspect of what you do, I'm also cautious that that word can be interpreted in many different ways. Some people have heard you talking already, and maybe this podcast is over for them. Others may be leaning in and being like, tell me more. What does that mean to you in terms of what is spirituality for Hilda?
You know, for me, it's about finding the authentic self. Is who are you? Who are you really? Who are you in the context of your life? Are you just a sum of what you've been taught at school, what you've read in a book? Or have you at some stage decided that the authentic self is the true spiritual self? So if you're pretending to, initially in my spiritual journey, I really thought I had to be sweet and nice,
For
but it's
sure.
out of character.
Yeah.
It's out of character. I can't be sweet and nice, and I can't be asking somebody, how's your ingrowing toenail, my sweetie? It's not in my nature. So if I am out of integrity with myself, I am out of integrity with my God, I am out of integrity with my community, and I am inauthentic. So if you are a person, that a feeling person, if you're becoming a harsh intellectual, that doesn't mean you're not clever. It just means you're a feeling person first. So if you're out of integrity with yourself, you're going to try and mold yourself on what daddy did or what mommy did, instead of being who you are and doing it the way you do it. So being out of integrity with myself is the biggest spiritual disservice I can do, not only for myself, but for everybody around me with who I interact. So for me, it's, and the work of who you are authentically is the true spiritual work for me. So who am I when I've taken my masks off? And we put a mask on every single time we have a traumatic experience, we add another mask. And eventually we're interacting from 17,000 layers. We're interacting here, not here. So in the becoming authentic, I have to peel those layers off. And it's not like an onion, it's like a spiral. You come to the same thing again and again and again. And until you peel all of those false layers off, and you can say, this is who I am. You know, I met Wayne Dyer years ago, and he said to me, Hilda, learn to become independent of the good opinions of others. So that the requirement is not even a pat on the back. I am fully aware that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, fully aware of it. If I turn myself into a pretzel to try and be everybody's cup of tea, I'm out of integrity with myself. My message gets convoluted. My teaching gets bastardized. There's just, if I am not authentic and if I am out of integrity with myself, I cannot connect to my higher self, which is true. So spirituality is, first of all, finding out who you are. Who are you? And what do you want? Who are you and what do you want? So find your I am statement. I am a catalyst for change. And if it's flippantly handed out, it's a really big statement. It is a really big statement. But can I effect that change wherever I go? Or am I only choosing to be a catalyst of change in this environment or that environment or that environment or that environment? I am a catalyst for change in every environment, including going to the grocery store and coming out and greeting the teller, friendly, acknowledge, make eye contact. I'm a catalyst for change, because that woman is going to go home and say, you know, there was this white chick today that greeted me in this friendly way. And I'm a catalyst for change. Let me be that one thing. So integrity, authenticity, and integrity connects me to my God, which connects me to true spirituality. Without, for me, other people do it differently. For me, that's the connection. And that's what I try and live by. I don't get it wrong. I don't get it right all the time. I get it wrong, and I cock it up as many times as others will cock it up. But I can just say, oh, I've forgotten who I am again. I don't go beat. I go, let me try again with more compassion and more understanding. There's the understanding again, intellectually centered stuff. You know?
And again and again and again, right?
And again and again. What would love do? Who does it serve? What would love do? Who does it serve? Over and over and over. In the traffic, yelling and screaming and calling people names. What would love do? Certainly not that.
Yes.
So it's a thing, you know.
Yeah, it's easy to what would love do when we're giving the talk or we're being seen, right? It's when you're in the traffic, it's when you're in the shopping store, supermarket, it's when you need to pay a bill. Then you got to ask yourself, what would love do?
Absolutely. And you know, there are only two sides of the coin for me. There's only love and fear.
Yeah.
And under love is compassion and caring and nurturing and kindness and mercy and all of that. And under fear is hatred and spite and meanness and aggression and blah, blah, blah. And we have a choice every day to say, what am I going to choose to, not every day, even every minute of every day. Am I going to walk past a beggar and kick him in the chops? Or am I going to go and buy him a meal? If you're buying that beggar a meal with the expectation that there would be a thank you, you're doing it out of authenticity, out of integrity with yourself. So if you're handing over that meal, it's a hard thing. You hand it over. If he chooses to throw it in the sand, then blessed be. You know, so it's anticipation that somebody does something with what you give them. The minute it leaves your hands, it's no longer your business. So for me, that really is it, the choice. What am I going which part of me am I going to live out of? Love part or fear part?
Yeah.
Choice.
I feel that deeply, and I totally agree with you. You said, you know, we need to find out who am I and what do I want. Now, when you look at that, someone will be like, Hilda, I'm so-and-so. So let's use me. I'm Ryan, and I want X, Y, and Z, and this life of things, of experiences in order to, I don't know, be happy. Is that what you're saying, or are you saying something else?
Well, I would first of all say to you, what do you want? So it's got to be a measurable, tangible thing. What do you want? It's not doable if you say I want to be happy. If you say to me, I want to be happy, and I go, okay, what is the last thing you did that made you happy? So that we can begin to explore the what is it that's causing you happiness? Because very often we don't know what causes the happiness or what causes the, we just know we're unhappy, you know. So it's exploring the why. What is behind the feeling that you're feeling? I want this or I want that. So for instance, I want to drive a new model Mercedes out the box. Then what do I have to do to get that? You can't just sit on the toilet and want that. There's got to be a couple of steps that you've got to do to get that. And if you, let's say you're a representative and you don't go and make the calls and you don't do your weekly planning, are you going to get that what you want? Clearly not. So where is your integrity? Who are you and what do you want? So it's not just, I want a happy life. So what is that? What does it mean to you? Not to me. A lot of people also think what will make you happy is the same stuff that makes them happy. That's not the case. And we fall into that trap all the time, you know. So I'll give you a small example. I adore my sister. She's an extraordinary, talentful woman with making the most beautiful flowers you can imagine. So she's a creative artist there, but I'm not. So am I deficient because I can't do the flowers? No, that's a strength she has. I'm a very good author. That's a strength she doesn't have. But is she more valuable than me because of her talent, or me more valuable than her because of my talent? Simply not. I just don't enjoy putting flowers in a vase. It always looks like a dog's bum. So it's, and I'm not going to beat myself up because I can't do flowers. I just, it's on my list of priorities, that's number 7,246. Whereas to write and to enjoy what I'm writing is virtually a daily experience. So who are you and what do you want? People don't know how to answer those questions.
Yeah, I think we're not taught to know how to answer them, right? It's not part of the traditional system in society. And that's why at some point we need to go and find out.
Yeah. So I'll give you another example. So when I'm coaching a woman that says, I want a man that's this, 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 and this, whether it's compassionate or caring or strong or reliable or whatever. So I go, who do you have to be in order to attract such a man into your life and maintain that relationship with him? So it's not just what do I want, is who do you have to be in order to get that which you want? If you want a respectful relationship, would it work if you were disrespectful? If you want an honorable relationship, can you be dishonorable? So that's when I teach people is who are you and what do you want? It's not a flippant question. It's a very difficult, hard question to get to, because you've also got to take into consideration that you were raised in a traditional family with these values. Do those values really serve you, or is it just the tradition of the family? We've always done it this way. So if you've always done it this way, does it still serve you? Who are you in the context of your life now, in context of what it is you want? Who do you have to be to have that special relationship in a partner that brings you joy? You can't have a relationship of joy if you're a sulky Sue and bitching and moaning over everything. It's not possible. So people used to say to me, you and Roy have an extraordinary relationship. You're such a lucky woman. And I go, when he died, I'm one of the few people that can say, I do not regret a single word I've ever spoken to him.
Oh, wow.
Okay. We have that relationship because I honored and respected who he was. And I have a standard that I've set for myself. So it's a very intricate, difficult, who are you? What do you want? It's not an easy thing because we flippantly think, I want a new car. It's, what do you have to do to get the new car? Who do you have to be to have a pet that loves you? You can't kick it and not feed it and expect it to love you. It's very simple. You know,
Yeah.
for me, it's integrity. My integrity is primary. You know, years ago, I sold huge, big industrial cameras, and I'd left that company 10 years previous when one of my customers phoned me and said, God, it took me about 3 months to find you, but I knew if I found you, you'd tell me what's going on. 10 years later. So that's about integrity. And that's about not over-promising and under-delivering. You know, so integrity is integrity is God.
I recently heard it said, Hilda, and it was, and it's in line with what you're saying, but it was, I can only lack that which I do not give. You know, if you want a loving, respectful relationship, be love and respect.
That's it.
This can now bring us to law of attraction stuff. And I know we want to go there because somebody's now like, Hilda, but I'm being love and I'm being abundant and I'm doing it all, but my life is not bringing to me success, love, or whatever it is that the person's trying to attract into their lives. So how do you feel about that whole law of attraction teaching?
The law of attraction is a very specific teaching, and it's on another occasion we're going to talk about the law of karma, not in this podcast but in another podcast. The law of attraction works in a way that says you will attract this thing if your word and your deed is in alignment with that which you want. Thought, word, and deed, my apologies. Thought, word, and deed. So you go, I want a new Mercedes-Benz. We're back on that. And you go, what does it cost? So I talk about this Mercedes-Benz and you go, it costs R500,000. I think they cost a bit more now, but R500,000. And I go, is it realistic that I want this and I'm being abundant about this, or is it unrealistic? If you're earning 5,000 Rand a month, you're not going to buy a new Mercedes. It's just, no matter how abundant you wish you are, it ain't going to happen. So if your thought is, I want a new Mercedes, and your word is, I love them. I adore them. I really think they're fabulous cars. And your deed is, let me work my ass off to get the thing. So thought, word, and deed has got to be in alignment with law of attraction. If you power that on the back end with emotion, you will get that which you seek much quicker. Also, let me just tell you that if you have this Mercedes-Benz and you lose it, because life happens, it's not a punishment that you weren't abundant enough. Maybe you just got retrenched. I am not of the belief that you somehow attracted this retrenchment into your life. But you know, you can just sell the bloody thing and buy yourself a little Renault. And then when you're back on your feet again, you buy another Mercedes. So it's not about, I'm not meditating enough. It's thought, word, and deed that gets you that which you want. If you talk about it, and if you think about it, and you do nothing, well, then guess what?
Not happening.
Yeah. So, and is it achievable? Is the objective achievable? Is it specific? Is it smart?
Measurable.
Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it
realistic?
Realistic?
Tangible.
And can you set a time to it? So the smart objectives has all got to be in place. You can't sit and meditate to get a new lover if you don't go on an internet dating site or go to the pub, or how is that possible?
Yeah, I'm completely with you.
So the law of attraction is it's not sure it works on, do you want to live as a hermit on top of the mountain and be a guru? Then actually get off your bum and go there. Unless you say to the world, I am a guru, why will they follow you? You thought, word, and deed. You can't just say, I wish to be a guru and then sit in your house. You know,
it's like being hungry. I'm hungry, so I'll meditate, and then someone will knock on the door and bring me the meal.
Yeah, so it's like me. I open the fridge and go, oh, there's only ingredients. There's no food.
Yeah.
Only ingredients. So what do I have to do? I've got to make something, right? So the law of attraction, I think, has been bastardized a little bit, that if we don't believe that we're worthy, we're not going to get it. I don't believe that that's how it works, because if that is how it works, then we've got to take responsibility for atrocious things like walking down the road and somebody rapes us.
Yeah, absolutely. Where does that come from? Yeah.
The law of attraction is very clear and very specific, and it's been absolutely bastardized, and it doesn't work for me. The law of attraction's got three things, always three things: thought, word, and deed in alignment. Deed is the biggest. So meditation is not going to buy you a Mercedes. It just ain't. Unless you're married to your husband and you feed him those mushrooms that are only edible once.
Oh, Hilda. Interesting that meditation keeps coming up, because in line with what you're saying about the law of attraction, and there needs to be the deed or the action behind it, I find that as I go deeper on the journey and keep living, then what I find in meditation is that it allows me to look at, or just inquire gently around, who is the one that wants the Mercedes-Benz, right? And do I feel any sense of being better than, being successful, being seen, being validated for having a Mercedes-Benz? And then I need to start looking at as to why is that the case? Because
that took me a while as well.
Yeah, it's that identity that wants to be something. Because I think that's very often where the law of attraction, we come into contact with the teaching, and it serves a certain purpose for sure. And then, like anything, we progress and it deepens and we grow. But it's almost like law of attraction. People meet that teaching and then they just want to super attract everything into their life. It's like,
oh, they go, what did you do
the one
to
that wants that? Say that again.
So when Roy died, somebody said to me, I wonder what you did to attract that into your life. And I was, horrified
Of course.
by the bastardization of the law of attraction in that sense. So one has to, and there comes in the compassion as well. So on a very high spiritual level, now we're going into that realm of the soul, which is, it could take another hour's worth of discussion, and the unconditionality of that. So in the realm of the soul, or I call it in the realm of the absolute, there is no physiology. There's no physiology. There's no flight or fight response. There's nothing that's, I can't bang my finger with a hammer and feel pain. There's no physiology. So in the realm of the soul, the unconditionality of it is such a deep thing. It's such a spectacularly detached love, and a love of no requirement. It's detached to say everything that is so is so. For instance, and I might step on toes again. It's what I do. I step on toes. So let's take veganism, for instance. So the vegan is on a path that says, this is my sacred journey. And that's the sacred journey for the vegan. To make anybody else wrong around that is to say my way is better. And that's simply not true. So how you meditate is not better, and how you perform healing is not better. It's your way. So the unconditionality is accept what is so. It is the human, it is my physiology, my flight or fight response that is outraged by behavior of people. But if I'm in the realm of the absolute, or the realm of total unconditionality, I can observe a whole universe being pulled into a black hole, and poof, it is no more. Energies, excuse me, now changed into something completely different. So is the veganism, must I be outraged by non-vegans, or must I be outraged by the black hole that consumed an entire universe? So the unconditionality is to let life be as it is. It is our humanness that has compassion to save the baby from the child molester, and to save the cat that's lying painfully in the street. It's our humanness that does that. It's not the unconditional love things. We need to love everything. It's not about loving everything. It is about accepting what is so, with complete acceptance. There is not, oh my God, look, the black hole just consumed a whole universe. It's not about that. Is look how it's changing. The energy can't ever go away.
Yeah.
It's there. It is my humanness that makes me desiring. So now we're going into the realm of what is ego. Should we annihilate the ego, or should we not annihilate? And that's a completely different discussion once again. But it's such a, and I think this is where we come to a teaching, is one thing leads to another, and we can be here for a year, so
sure.
it's really
Sure.
fabulous.
I think the ego discussion would be a great one, and perhaps we could link up with somebody else and make it a three-way podcast, just to get different perspectives. But what really come through strongly for me here, and hearing you share, Hilda, is compassion first and foremost. That's what we started the discussion around, and then authenticity, which is a journey on its own, and then integrity. And if we can just work on those three things at new depths each time, I think that's living an honorable journey.
Absolutely. Again, it's not the layers of an onion, it's a spiral. Because each time you go to another layer of the spiral, you're dealing with the same thing at another depth level. So you're never going to stop learning about the journey of your soul, or stop learning about compassion. It's a never-ending learning. It's a never-ending journey. It's not going to end. You're not going to get a certificate at the end of this and say, okay, you got it, you can go ahead now. It's can I be a better person today than I was yesterday? And man, some days I just think, I don't know, I'm going to get through today without killing someone. And other days I'll go, I'm the master of compassion today. It depends on what's going on in my life. And I have this physical body. This physical body is governed by chemistry, whether I like it or not. I cannot take the chemistry out of the body.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's the flight and fight response is hardwired into this physical body. To go to a place where you think I should be sweetness and light is like saying to the lion to stop hunting. Physiology is physiology. It's, am I going to be governed by my chemistry, or am I going to manage my out? So it's, you can't do anything about the chemistry. It's there. If your partner dies, you're going to be sad. You can't positive it away. You know, you have this physiology to teach you compassion. When you're in the realm of the absolute, there is no compassion, because what is so is so. You can't change that. The black hole has consumed the universe. It's the humanness that goes, oh my God, what about all the people? And what about the animals? The soul is the soul. And it goes, look at that.
Observing. Thank you, Hilda. For the ears who have heard us have a discussion today, and those hearts that might want to actually get in contact with you, are you happy to just mention how can they reach out?
My email address is info@hildadelarosa.com. hildadelarosa.com.
Thank you. I'll also drop that in our description of our chat today. And a huge thank you from my side, Hilda. I really am grateful that we got to connect. It really was time. So thank you so much.
That's long enough, Em. Thank you very much for inviting me. I had great fun.
Me too. Thank you, Hilda.
Bye.